Welcome to Faith Positive Radio with Dr. Joey Fawcett, the Christian business coaching conversation that increases your faith with greater joy at work so you love God and others more. Dr. Joey interviews Christian business professionals just like you to discover their secrets for working faith positive in a negative world. Welcome to Faith Positive Radio with Dr. Joey Fawcett.
You know, sometimes you get an idea that just won't turn you loose. And that idea burns in you and you can't get it off your mind and it's in your heart. And pretty soon you start praying over it because it's consuming so much of your time, energy, and attention. And you discover that God has gifted you with this idea, that it's yours and you better pursue it. What really fuels that fire within you? What is it that drives you to act on that idea and make a business out of it? Oh, by the way, God has a tendency to give ideas like this to visionary leaders and entrepreneurs. Today's guest, Faith Positive Nation, is going to help us understand how that process works. What are the 7 primary drives that fuel people like me and Matt Brauning? Matt, welcome to Faith Positive Radio, man. Glad you're on today.
Hey, thanks for having me. I sure appreciate it. Super excited to have this conversation.
Oh, me too, man. So there's 7 fuels that drive us as entrepreneurs.
That is correct. So that's part of the new book I came out with this year called the Firebox Principle.
Okay, I don't have my copy yet, so you hold your copy.
I'll hold it right here. It's the 7 drives that fuel every entrepreneur.
There you go.
You know, it's interesting. The idea came as I was researching and learning about old steam engines. And
Old steam engines,
yeah, and the locomotives. And what happens is deep inside every one of those trains is a compartment called the firebox.
Right.
It's never seen from the outside, but it's deep inside. And inside the firebox, you put in a certain kind of fuel. The fuel heats the water turns to steam. The steam creates momentum and moves the train forward. So the question, though, is depending on what environment the train rolls through, that determines what kind of fuel they'll have. So, you know, in America, they favor wood. The Brits would favor coal. They've used sugar products, corn, all sorts of things. So the question is, I believe that God's put a firebox inside each and every one of us that is the momentum to move our lives forward for the calling he has for us. And this is true for all over the world, in business, in life, in families, certainly in entrepreneurism, and it's certainly true in the church. And when I look at the fireboxes that are inside us, the question that I land with is, what fuel drives you? And as I began to research entrepreneurs from all across the world, from present and past, I began to notice that it's not just entrepreneurs, it's visionaries, it's leaders, it's innovators, it's creators, it's artists, it's teachers. It's someone who has a vision inside and wants and needs to get it out. There's a fuel that pushes them, and I found there's only 7 different patterns for it. So I find that it was consuming me. It was my firebox, so I had to get it out, and I had to get the research done, and now the book is in our hands.
Oh man, that's beautiful. I love it. I love that imagery of firebox too, and the whole notion that we throw in our firebox what it is that's around us. So these 7 drives are really God working in the context in which we find ourselves, right? To fuel us and fire us to go do the divine design that he placed in us.
Very much focused around the origin stories, you know, to use the metaphor of all the recent superhero movies. Every great superhero has an origin story, and every great visionary has an origin story. Why are they doing what they did? You know, take a Moses, for example. There was an anger that burned inside him when he saw his Hebrew brothers and sisters being mistreated.
Yes.
And good or bad, because there was some bad in there, but there was certainly good that God used. That fueled him to leave Egypt, to come back, to say, I'm going to do something about this. And out in the world, we see the same drive. I actually call that one the Avenger drive.
Oh, that's cool.
To take the wrong and turn it right.
That's right. Justice League, right? Make it all good. Wow.
That's exactly right.
So tell us what some of these 7 fuels are that drive us.
Sure. Well, you know, so the Avenger drive was one of them, and I'll just pull open the book right here. It's probably the easiest way.
Sure.
There's
so
this
that Avenger drive is like Moses is an example of that. He burned with passion for his people and to see them delivered from slavery in Egypt, and so he acted on that.
He wanted to take a wrong, something he saw that it made him angry inside, and make it right.
Okay.
Now, there's also worldly characters all throughout history that have done the exact same thing. Take Lamborghini, for instance. He's a great example. So Lamborghini was a tractor mechanic. He was fixing up old World War II engines and helping to make more farm equipment. Well, he got so successful in his business. One day he decided to reward himself to go get a Ferrari. So he was in Italy at the time, and he went to go see Enzo Ferrari, and he gave him some advice on how to make the machine, the engine, a little bit more efficient. Well, Mr. Ferrari didn't like getting advice from a lowly tractor mechanic, and he told him so.
Well, come on, man. What do tractor mechanics know about Ferrari engines?
What do you know about a pristine sports engine? Lamborghini was so hurt and angered by that. He said, you know what? I'll show you who I am. And he went out and founded Lamborghini and said, I'm going to make myself a better car. So you can find these examples all over the world. That's the Avenger drive. So it's a few different examples from both contexts.
Right.
Again, this is a motivation that here's the thing. If you tap into the motivation that truly drives you, it's coming, whether it's from heaven or whether it's from inside or from the environment. If you tap into the real emotional motivation that's causing us to create something, two things happen. If you tap into the right one, you'll be unstoppable. The vision gets cast, the people rally around it, the business succeeds, things take off. The other option, though, is sometimes people misunderstand what it is. They believe it's one thing when it's really another. And if you don't catch it early enough, you'll get dissension in the ranks. You'll get the team who's not motivated. They start to fall away.
The message is mixed at that point.
Very much. And they don't know what the problem is. Well, the problem is right here. The problem is the firebox got muddled, so it's time to get back on the correct track.
Right. We got to pull it back in line. Yeah. And so often it seems like, you're talking about the fire that burns within, these kinds of things. So often people say, I don't have an idea. At least in my experience and the people that I coach in Faith Positive Nation, it's more that the idea has you and you simply can't escape it. Like Moses, like Lamborghini, that Avenger model, they couldn't escape that injustice, that wrong that had been done. It just wouldn't leave them alone. And that's got to be the Holy Spirit burning brightly within you, right?
So often that's exactly what God does for us, isn't it? He comes down and says, you're called whether you know it or not, whether you want it or not, whether you expect it or not, or whether you believe you're able or not. He's going to call us into what we are called to do, right?
Yeah.
He always equips the called, but he doesn't call the equipped.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you look at the 12 disciples and you figure that out pretty quick. I'm not sure how a fisherman could become the rock of the church, but yet that's Peter's story, right?
Yeah,
I find that quite consoling that a fisherman could become the rock of the church. I love fishing, and then he wasn't all that in a bag of chips anyway. So
if he could be the rock of the church, I could certainly show up and stack some chairs.
Oh man, I just want to be a pebble, right? So we got that Avenger firebox. What's another firebox?
Well, I probably won't have time in the short time we have to go through all of them, but I'll give you a quick list, and you tell me if one jumps out at you.
All right, cool.
There's the significance drive. The need to be significant. The artisan drive, the need to create something beautiful. The world impact drive, that's the need to change the trajectory of planet Earth. The contribution drive, it's all about the people. There's people you care about deeply, and that's why you want to do what you do. There's the spiritual drive, which might be obvious. This is your creator called you to it.
Right.
And the thrive drive is the sixth one. That's to improve your station in life, whether it's to get out of poverty or to gain wealth or create something new. There's a lot of people that are driven by that way. Absolutely. And then, of course, the Avenger drive. Just curious, do any of those first six really stick out and you went, I wonder what that is?
Oh, well, I'm a D, all of the above kind of guy. So which one, and I know, Matt, this is like asking you to choose between your children. Which one is yours?
Well, and here's what's great is what a phenomenal question. And people always ask, of course, when they get into the book, which drive am I? How am I going to find out? Well, there's two answers to that. The first answer is this is not a personality profiling, which is so nice to know, right? Yep. We never want to take these things, the Strengths Finders, Myers-Briggs, DISC, whatever it is, life languages in the church. We don't want to take those and box ourselves into something.
No, we don't want to buttonhole people, but
never. But we do want to understand who people are, how we communicate, and what motivates us. And this one in particular, the fire drives, relate specifically to how you show up in a certain context. So you'll have one drive for maybe why you planted a church, another drive for why you started a business, another drive for another business you did. So you might look, if you looked at a serial entrepreneur, you might, they could relate to each one of these for different businesses they've had in their life.
Depending on the context. And
that's right.
It seems to me the season of life. I know I found myself in different seasons of life where I was doing my firebox was one thing for this season and another for another season.
So I found myself relating to nearly all of them in different seasons and different experiences. So I talked about when we were leading and pastoring a small church in California. That was the spiritual drive, 100%. God told us to do it, so we did it. I didn't have the right experience for it. I didn't have the right pedigree for it. I didn't have a lot of the right things for it, but neither did virtually every leader that he ever called.
Yeah, I'm thinking Moses, his first response was, I can't talk, I stuttered. Right? How am I going to talk to Pharaoh, the most powerful guy on the planet, right?
You got a stutter and a stick, I'll make it work for you.
That's all he needs, man. Yeah.
Gideon's hiding, I'll come out mighty man of valor. You got to do that. And sometimes I felt like a Gideon quite a lot as we were hiding out, and I was great in business, but in church life, I thought, gosh, could I really do what he's asking me to do? But when you look at your work and you know that the spiritual drive has a hand on it, there's nothing you can't do. Mother Teresa was one of my examples as a spiritual driven person.
Oh, wow.
A lot of people would look at Mother Teresa and say she would fit into the contribution drive, which means it was all about the people, right? She got called to live amongst the poor and to help them. Mother Teresa, though, once said, I got asked by God, I got called by God to go live amongst the poor and minister to them. And then she said this, anything less than that would be a disavowing of the faith.
Because that was her call.
Very much, which tells me she had a strong contribution drive, but it was probably number 2, maybe number 3. Spiritual drive was number 1. Yeah. Because she got called to, she had no choice otherwise. So that's one of the fun ones. I love looking at the artisan drive. That's another great one you might enjoy. To make something beautiful. So you have classic people like a Steve Jobs, who he approached technology very differently than anyone else. He approached movie making and Pixar different than anyone else. He cared about what the internal circuit board looked like for a Mac computer that no one would ever open up because they didn't make it accessible. But he said, these wires have to be more beautiful. This has to be this perfect, humming, smooth machine. Wow. He added calligraphy and fonts, the first person to do that. Setting. He cared about the beauty of making something. It wasn't about the sales. The sales came. It wasn't about the technology. The technology came. It was about the beauty. And my biblical example, I think you'll like this, would be Miriam, Moses' sister. Miriam was a dancer and a singer. And I love if you read early, like into Exodus, you'll find, the Hebrew people, the Israelites have moved across. They've gone through the Red Sea. They've seen the miracle of God. They're with Moses. But right on the other side, Miriam takes her place in history of who she's called to be. And she leads the people in dance and in song. She does what's beautiful, and she rallies the people and brings them together to consecrate the miracle, to create the remembrance that this is what God did for us in this place. And although she was called by God to do it, clearly, there was a piece about it where I imagine, this isn't explicit in the Bible, but I imagine Miriam she danced and sang her whole life, I would guess. As a little girl, she probably, whenever she could, she was in the inner chamber dancing and singing. And when she had the moment, right, to bring her gifting, to bring her artisan to the people of Israel, God used that in a mighty way. So I think, wherever you look at it, you can find artisan drive. You find it with Warren Buffett in investments. It's not about the money. It's about the game. It's about creating something. It's about having fun with it. It's about winning at it. It's about doing something that is an art to those people.
And what I hear you saying is that there are these different fireboxes that God calls us into at various seasons of our lives when we're uniquely suited to bring that contribution to bear.
That's perfect timing. He always uses the divine timing, and most times it doesn't feel like it's time for it, but it might very well be that exact time.
Well, from God's perspective, right? From our perspective, I stutter and I can't do that. But from God's timing, it's a perfect time. So what prompted you? What was the idea that God sent you that seized you to write the Firebox Principle?
I remember I was about 6 years old. Never forget this. I was just into kindergarten. It was early in kindergarten, and I'm standing behind this big oak tree. And my mom drops me off. I go in there for the first recess, and I'm looking out from the oak tree, and I'm seeing all these kids. And it looked like they all knew each other forever. They were playing together. They had no problem talking. But I'm standing behind the tree, and I remember thinking this to myself, my little 6-year-old brain saying, I could never talk to these kids.
Oh, wow. Were you new to the neighborhood or something?
Nope. No, I grew up in the same house for 18 years.
Oh,
There was no
wow.
environmental reason.
But there
All
was just that first day of kindergarten, huh?
and the second day and
And
the
the
first
third.
day of first grade.
Oh,
And
wow.
that thought, now I had friends here and there, but that feeling of, and I don't know if I found a lot of people do relate to this. I always felt like I was on the outside looking in.
Mm.
Even if I was in, I'm sitting here with you right now, and there's this little part of my brain that thinks, gosh, how did I get in this room? He must not know who I really am, you know? And I'm constantly, and whether, on my own podcast, I have a podcast called The Purpose Driven Entrepreneur, where I
Okay.
interview all sorts of entrepreneurs doing cool things and pick their brains about their stories. And it's about their
Mm.
origin stories and successes.
Mhm.
Some of these people I have on, I find myself pinching myself going, I really have a relationship with these people. I don't get it. So all
Mhm.
through school, I felt like that. And it
Mm.
wasn't until I was 22 and I started my first business that for the first time, not knowing it then, but looking back, for the first time, I was the one casting a vision for other people. And I did it through entrepreneurism. And when I
Mm.
cast a vision, it was in the mortgage business. I started a mortgage broker company,
Uh-huh.
and I ran that, and we got up to, about 20 independent agents and 4 or 5 employees in the office, and we were just humming, and I was flipping houses, and I was doing all this in my early to mid 20s.
Mhm.
I looked around, and I saw that I'd cast this vision, and it rallied people to come around it. And from that moment on, I thought, I need to be the one. If I'm the one who casts a vision, then people will rally around me. So
Mm.
I did it almost as a survival mechanism, but looking back, I think that's really what I was doing. And
Uh-huh.
it culminated, I'm nearly 40 now, or no, let's say almost 39. I'm 38 as we record.
Yeah. Hell,
But
let's
I'm
not
already
make you
starting to
older
think,
than you are, man. That's
I'm
right.
thinking in terms of legacy and what I've done and what I'm leaving behind and what I'm doing next.
Uh-huh.
And I think over the last, nearly 20 years, 2 decades of doing this, that's what part of that marketing of entrepreneurism is. And that's where the book came out. I wanted to have a book for entrepreneurs.
Mm.
And this will definitely be the marketing of my life, of my entrepreneur story and journey for people to find out where they fit in and what's been driving you under the surface and where you
Mm.
want to go with it. And how
Mhm.
you can help to rally your volunteers, if it's a ministry or nonprofit,
Right.
or your team members, your clients, your family members, everyone around you. How do you rally them around the vision? You wave the flag with pride. You wave that flag of, here's my motivation. This
Mm.
is why we do what we do, and this is why you can follow along with it.
Mm. Yeah.
So that's a long answer to your short question, but
No, man, it's
hope
an
that was fun.
incredible question. You're reminding me of Simon Sinek's why. Once you cast that vision out of your why, other people are attracted to that. My question, Matt Brauning, is how did you go from that guy who felt like he was on the outside looking in to a guy who started at only 22, his own mortgage brokerage company? Something happened. There was a defining God moment that flipped your switch. How did that happen?
Well, I'll tell you right now, I made the biggest mistake of my life.
Here's the Avenger story, right?
I did. I went to a seminar. I went to a seminar with Tony Robbins, the guy with the big teeth, big hands, huge head, and I coached and worked with Tony for many years. Not for him, but I worked with him as a mentor and as a coach, and I attended many of his trainings. But that first time I went to a seminar, I was just turned, or almost, I think I was 21, almost 22.
Mm-hmm.
And I came back, and he asked questions that I'd never asked before.
Mm.
And I didn't grow up with God in my life or in the church. I just grew up just regularly in the world like anybody else would maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And I never asked questions like, what's your purpose? What are you here
Wow.
to do?
Mm.
I never asked questions like, what do I value deeply in my life, and what must I have and what must I never have? And how can I help people? How can I show up for someone else? And I always wanted to care about people. I always gave back. I always tried to create success somehow. But I never asked those deep questions. And after that seminar, I started asking that.
Oh, wow.
And 5 days later, I quit my job / got fired, whatever you want to call it. But I was no longer, and I was working for a mortgage broker, and I didn't know what to do. So I sat and I wrote and I journaled, and 5 days later, I started my first business, and I never looked back. I've been self-employed ever since.
And that was your own mortgage brokerage company.
And I did that for almost 5 years, up through about 26 years old. And then at 26, I had another, moment on the mount where I went to Australia, and I broke out as a speaker. I wanted to do trainings and coaching. I wanted to help people.
Mm-hmm.
And I started off as a life coach. I made no money. It took me 2 years to make more than $900.
Mm-hmm.
It was a tough road to hoe, so to speak.
It is 2 long years.
Very long years. I mean, I went through all the fortune I had amassed. I was a self-made millionaire by 25, and I was bankrupt by 26.
Oh, wow.
And I look back and I think, could I have avoided that? Maybe, but I don't know that I could have, because in that moment, that's one of the things that I needed to do. I needed to lay it all down to go into the new world. Now, I don't advise for people to do that, but that's what I needed in my heart at the time. I needed to lay it all down and say, I don't want any of it. I just want to help people. And luckily, since then, well, not luckily, I guess it's been a lot of hard work. Over the last 10 years, from 2008, 2018, I have been, we've been very, very successful running the podcast is a top-rated podcast. We're syndicated on WCKG in Chicago, which is amazing, on radio. So you can catch us on 102.3 FM and 1530 AM. I've done hundreds and hundreds of workshops and seminars and coaching clients, and we teach public speaking. We teach personal development skills. There's so much that I get to contribute to the world, and I get to have a success doing it. And now looking back, of course, it's, God's hand was over it the entire time.
Right. So you didn't grow up in a Christian home, and you experienced the height of success, self-made multimillionaire, and then the pit of agony, right? You virtually lost it all. Where was that defining moment when you came to Jesus?
That is one of my favorite questions. I'll give you a short answer for it. My older brother had gotten very sick very quickly, and he passed away within about a 6-week period.
Oh,
and
man.
Yeah, he was 36 at the time, 6 weeks, and I was 33.
Oh,
and as hard as that was, we talk a lot about, in Christian circles especially, people talk a lot about, well, God has a plan. And I think a lot of it is things that people regurgitate that they heard from somebody.
Yeah,
and they make up things that the Bible doesn't say. They say things like God must have needed an angel.
Oh,
God gave him cancer so that we could learn. And that's not true.
That stuff nauseates me, man. I'm just going to say that.
Thank you. It's just false teaching. It's not accurate. It actually stirs me. It gets me mad. I didn't know anything at the time because I didn't know Jesus. So I didn't. I just thought, oh yeah, that just doesn't sound right. Come to find out, though, it is very true in Romans when he says that God will use all things that happen for good. He'll find and he'll reframe. He'll use things to make good out of what already is bad. Because we live in a fallen world, and that's right. Yet we live in victory. So it's this fun in between. So
it's
anyway, turned into a preach. My story, my story is, when that happened, I started going to this Baptist church with my parents and my sister's family because I just wanted to be there with my family. And my parents' neighbor was the pastor. So my brother had gone to church a few times, and he was saved, and he really liked it. So I started going and hanging out with them. A few weeks in, I don't know what happened. All I know is that the Holy Spirit grabbed me, and one week I could care less. I was just there to support my grieving family. And the next week, I had so many questions that I couldn't answer. And I went to the pastor, and he's a dear friend. And I just, now, and I said, man, I got questions. Can I talk with you? And he lit up, and he said, of course you can. And, within a few weeks, I was giving my life to Jesus. And, and then, a few months later, I should have done it that day, but a few months later, I got baptized full submersion, baptized in the Holy Spirit, and life's been going on ever since, and just continuously called into more and more service in the ministry. And, we've had the privilege of leading the church for a year and a half. We don't do that today, but we serve in our church out here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. It's phenomenal. And I get to still run my business and do shows like this.
Oh, man. What a good life. That's incredible. Thanks for sharing.
Very, very blessed. Yeah.
Man, that's a poignant story, the pain and grief of losing your brother. But the fact that God can in this fallen world take situations like that and somehow bring glory out of it. That's the miracle of it, right?
He does. He brings glory and victory in every situation. And I believe we can never forget that every situation is victorious, no matter what it looks like, because he's always standing on the devil.
Yeah, exactly.
Heel to the head.
It's so easy for us in Faith Positive Nation to forget that because we go to work and we're trying to be Christians, and it looks like that, devil's got his boot on our neck and we can't breathe or something like that. So those challenges appear daily. And as you and I have talked before, it's really how we respond to those challenges that make a huge difference. You got several different avenues to your business here. What's a challenge that you face? Maybe one you're facing right now in your work.
I'll answer it this way from a faith perspective, because I think that would probably, that would bless the conversation. one of the challenges I think we have when we're faith driven in our business
Mm-hmm.
is, and today, like I refer to it as a kingdom business, very much
Mm-hmm.
in my theology and the way I look at God's work on the earth is
Sure.
very much through a victorious standpoint, which
Mm-hmm.
means the kingdoms come, right?
Mm-hmm.
We pray that classic Lord's Prayer. He didn't say thy
Right.
church go. He said thy kingdom come.
Right.
So we're praying in that the kingdom comes to the earth and it's in the process of coming.
Right. It's here, but not all of it. Right.
It's here, but not all of it. So that means, though, we get to stand in a place of victory. So when I look at business, I love that some people I think are called to full-time ministries. For me, I thoroughly believe that I've been called to ministry, but very often in the workplace. And in church I serve, and in the workplace.
Sure.
And through entrepreneurism, I can cast a vision. We've seen people saved and baptisms from, the people have come to God through that.
Right.
But very much the challenge becomes, though, when I heard a word from God, when I get a prophetic vision from the Lord, and I know that I'm supposed to do something in my business, and I've had that recently. Like right now, as we're speaking, we moved, my family and I, my wife, my son, we moved to Grand Rapids, Michigan from Orange County, California, 2 months ago.
Wow. I hope you bought some winter clothing.
Not yet. We're halfway done. I still, I mean, look, I'm in a t-shirt. This is terrible.
Yeah, you need a big coat, dude.
There's a lot that we need, trust me. But he's blessed us every step of the way, of course.
Sure. And he told you to move from Orange County to Grand Rapids.
Told us to come to Grand Rapids. And so the challenge becomes, I have a word over my life and a word over our business. And I do believe that not everyone sees the same way, but I believe that God speaks to us prophetically on a regular basis. He speaks to the church. He speaks to the people. He's a living God. It says his word is living, which means that it's not a dead word that doesn't change. It's a living word that can speak to you in 2018.
And if we're listening, we hear it. If
you're listening. So as I'm listening, so my challenge is this. When I listen to a prophetic vision from God and I hear a word, do this, Matt. Go, and it was slowly, but we prayed and we're supposed to move. So I know I have to shift my business's trajectory because we're a very hands-on business. A lot of live workshops. Most of my marketing is live speaking. I travel from Orange County to San Diego, to the Bay Area, to Arizona, to Florida, wherever I go. And I travel and I speak, and then I teach, and then I invite people sometimes to come to one of our workshops, right? As you might imagine. Sure. And that's the main marketing piece. But now God says, I need you to be in this remote part of the world with no direct flights. and I know that I'm not supposed to be away from my family for 2-3 weeks at a time to continue doing the same thing. So the challenge becomes, how do I follow the word of God over my life and over the business and instigate change at sometimes a more rapid pace than naturally you'd want to do? Naturally, I might want to lay this change out over the course of a year, but I need to lay this out. I need to move in a month
now,
because God said now. And when there's a suddenly of God, it's a suddenly. So I think that's kind of the challenge, if that makes sense. I'm happy to chat about that with you. Is how do you balance? How do you bring the suddenlies of God and you bring that into the workplace? And I still need to lay out the groundwork to make the change. So I'm navigating through, how do I move that change? How do I get people on board with it?
Right.
And it's working. A big part of it is, when we got syndicated on the radio, that just happened a couple of weeks ago. It's amazing. Right. Total miracle. And the podcast has taken off. We're in the top charts right now. I was just looking, I was right next to, when you search entrepreneur, we were next to Damon John from Shark Tank and Gary Vee and, Marie Forleo and all these entrepreneur people and Entrepreneur Magazine. It's like we're right next to them.
Oh,
and how does that happen?
Supernatural intervention. That's right.
It truly does. So I guess I'm landing on, although it's a challenge, the way to navigate it is when God says go, we must go. And when God says stay, we must stay.
Yeah. So in faith, you respond to those challenges by getting clear about the word, right? Amen. That you've received through your vision, and then trusting God enough to act in courage.
Well said.
The acting is the hard part though, man. Because, it's one thing to sit in your prayer closet and get this word from God. It's another to go say to your wife, we're moving from OC to Grand Rapids.
Get your coat. Now, luckily, it didn't
You
go down
can't
just
buy
like
those coats. See, I don't think. I guess Amazon would deliver you one, right? But
I'm sure they would, yeah. Now, luckily for us, we don't, the conversation didn't happen just like that. It was more, my wife's very prophetic, so she'll hear first usually.
oh yeah.
And I got a note from someone. They said, hey, I feel like you're supposed to spend a little time out here. I don't know if it's anything or nothing. It's not a word. I just saying, I felt like that, and I just wanted to see if there was something to it. And I showed her, and I said, Lola, look at this. And I started laughing, going, yeah, right, like we're going to come to Grand Rapids where the other Christians are. And instead of laughing, she said, oh, yeah. And I said, what? And she said, I've been feeling that for a little while. And so I said, interesting. So we start talking, and we're praying together. And I went in the prayer closet, and I came out, okay.
Oh, yeah.
I know you're right. I'm just rebelling, so forgive me.
Oh, man. I understand because I've gone to my wife with visionary words like that before. And she said, yeah, I was wondering how long it was going to take you to hear that.
Like, what? Tell me before.
Drop me a breadcrumb, baby. I'll follow.
Yeah, shield me on this. That's
I know. So
we're all prophetic, but that's not my gifting.
Yeah, really. Well, the courage to act once you get that word, right?
Yes.
Because intention divorced from attention and action is just the road to nowhere. I can have great intentions. I intend to come out of my prayer closet and act on that. I gave some attention to what God wanted me to do, but until I act on it, it doesn't count, right?
I love that.
There's nothing. So when you act, and of course, courage for me is the ability to act in the face of fear. So while these visions scare us to death, in fact, every time an angel shows up, right, first words out of his or her mouth, don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid.
Yeah, but we are afraid.
Because you're probably afraid right now.
Yeah,
but don't be afraid.
So to be able to act, man, that's a great story. And that's a great way for all of us in Faith Positive Nation really to overcome those challenges that we face at work. Trust God with it, get a word from God, and then go do it. And just trust that God's going ahead of you to take care of those outcomes.
That's one of the missing pieces too. Sorry to interrupt, but so much people talk about prayer and God, give me courage to do this. God, let this job interview work out, and we're praying into sometimes it's our will,
the outcomes. That's right.
We miss the first step, which is you said so casually, which is when God gives us a vision, and that's why the Bible talks so much about vision. Casting vision, receiving vision, having, when that angel guy comes and and says, hey, Gideon, don't be afraid, you mighty man of valor.
Right.
You're probably afraid, but I'm bringing a vision to you. And then I call you. And I call you who you are. I call you by your true identity. I call out the gold in you. And we got to let God call the gold out in us. We have to let him call out our true identity as sons and daughters of a king. We have to, we don't stand in that space of righteousness, of being a son or a daughter of a king, of living that magnificent life because we're in a kingdom, because we're in victory, because there's a calling and a vision on our life. How in the world could we ever expect to get faith and courage through prayer for the things we want to do? So I'd encourage anyone to stop asking for what you want to do and start asking God what he has for you.
That's right.
And when you get what he has for you, pray for that.
Because
pray for strength for that.
It's not a prayer if I'm trying to manipulate the outcomes. It's like dropping a coin in a bubblegum machine and pulling the lever and hoping I get the red one. Right? I mean, that's what we're doing if I'm praying for outcomes. If I'm praying for God's vision and calling on my life so that I can give expression to my divine design, the outcomes belong to God, and to God be the glory for those outcomes. I'm called just to go do, right? I pay attention. I cast my intention around God's vision, and then I act on it. That's all I'm called to do. If I start manipulating outcomes, I think I'm God. Wrong answer. Try again.
Now we're preaching. Now it's on fire. Let's do this.
Okay,
Come on. I love it.
I'm really passionate about this. This is the Achieve core practice of the Faith Positive Work style, by the way. So that's where I camp out sometimes. Anyway, hey, Matt, somebody in Faith Positive Nation is going to want to reach out to you, buddy. Before you give us the website and all that kind of stuff, we also like to know, Faith Positive Nation, what's that verse, that passage that really lights up your firebox?
Thanks for asking that. We were chatting just before, and I said, man, they're all my favorite kids.
I know. I get that a lot.
And they speak, but one that has stayed with me really since early in my relationship with the Lord and through now is 2 Timothy 1:6. Okay. And depending on the version you read, it says this: for this reason I remind you to fan into flame the gift of God, which is in you to the laying on of my hands. Now, he's not talking about the gift of salvation in this verse.
Right.
I don't believe it's a lowercase g,
Sure.
and it's the gift of God that was placed in you through the laying out of my hands. The Apostle Paul is talking to Timothy, a shepherd and elder he appointed in his church.
Right.
And he laid hands on him and imparted a gift. So for me, it's always stood out. God's always spoke to me about seeking, what are the gifts that he has put in you that are unique to you, that are for you to stir up and to bring to the world. I believe that a lot of the way God reaches the world and loves on the world, right? John 3:16, he loved the world.
Right.
But it's more than just that. Even like the greatest gift he could give was his son. But beyond that was he's also given each and every one of us to the world, I believe. And he puts gifts in us that we can express who he is through us to the people. So it's always been important.
You were talking about earlier, right?
The what?
The gold that he puts in us, that he calls out.
And then part of the gifting is that we call out the gold in the other people. So it's always been strong for me to remember. And the interesting part about this verse is Paul was reminding him that Timothy, has to fan into flame, right? Or another version says, stir up the embers. So it's this idea that a gift from God is this ember. It's real. It's tangible. You can't get rid of it. You can't return it. It doesn't come with a receipt. You can't go back to Target with your gift. You have to use it. There's only one choice.
That's right. No rebates, man.
Ember. No rebates. But it comes as an ember. It comes as a small fire, and it's our responsibility to co-labor and to fan it in flame. Build it to something bigger. So I constantly remind myself that on one hand, this verse tells me that on one hand, we give it all to God and we have to be reliant on him. Yes. On the other hand, it's our responsibility to co-labor and to build ourselves up. And that's why I love the things that you and I do, right? Separately and together. It's part of it. We need to sharpen each other. We need to build up our skill sets.
Sure.
If God calls you to preach, you're not going to preach off the couch. You owe it to him to study, to read the word, to get better as a public speaker,
right, to get better at that.
Why wouldn't you? So that's what that verse says to me.
Man, I love that fanning the flame thing too, because it goes back to the Holy Spirit, being like a wind and a breath. And of course, that's what fans that flame. Then we go all the way back to the creation of Adam, when God goes nose to nose with Adam and breathes into him that ruach that makes him a living being, that spirit. So man, that's what fans the flame, it's put in us, right? For this divine design. And the calling then is our opportunity to fan that flame with the Holy Spirit's help. So oh, man, here we go. This is good stuff, Matt. Faith Positive Nation is going to want to reach out to you. First of all, hold up that book again, The Firebox Principle. We want to take a look at that. So I can just go to Amazon.
Here you go, fireboxprinciple.com. And the best place to get it is fireboxbook.com. Fireboxbook.com.
Why is that the best place?
2 reasons. Well, 3 reasons. You can pick up the book, of course. Okay. You'll get and if you order it through there, I can give you actually a signed hardcover copy of this. It's quite a nice book.
Oh, sweet.
But you'll also, when you order it there, you can also get a completely free $997 virtual training where I teach all through the book, all 7 drives.
Really?
And it's not a webinar where I sell stuff. It's just me teaching through the entire book. So it's a bonus $1,000 training that you get when you get the book directly. Dude. It's published through Unprecedented Press, which is a Christian publishing house. Even though it's not a Christian book, they published me. And what's really cool about the reason why I want to do that is if you go to Amazon, you can still get it. But if you go to fireboxbook.com, you'll be supporting 2 places. You'll be supporting the Everyone Global Giving Initiative, where the publisher donates a percentage of the profits to orphans and widows and outreach in the world. And then I donate a huge portion of my author profits, nearly all of it, to the Burn Institute of San Diego to send children who are burn survivors to burn camp for the summer so they can remember to be kids again. And it's called Beyond the Scars. It's a phenomenal camp. We've raised $10,000 so far this year for the Burn Institute, and a huge percentage of the author proceeds go directly to that when you get it from fireboxbook.com.
Let me get this straight. So I go to fireboxbook.com. I get a signed hard copy from you, right?
That's right.
I get almost $1,000 of free video training from you, and I get to help orphans and widows around the world, plus help burn kids in San Diego.
That's exactly correct.
That's like a win, right?
All the way around. Super passionate about it.
Yeah, your generosity just really inspires me, and I know inspires all the Faith Positive Nation, because you're not just one more guy hawking a book, right? You're doing good to help the world, right? So hold it up one more time. Fireboxprinciplebook.com.
It's fireboxbook.com. That's it.
My bad.
We'll keep it simple. I'm sure it'll be in the show notes. Fireboxbook.com.
It is. It's right there in the episode copy. Fireboxbook.com.
Yeah. And you can find me on all social media at Matt Brauning, Brauning, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, whatever you go on, at Matt Brauning, you can find me and you'll see podcast episodes and you'll see pieces of the book and content and photos for my family and all that kind of stuff if you like to follow this sort of conversation.
Oh, sweet. We'll definitely do that. Matt, thanks so much for the gift of your time and wisdom today. Faith Positive Nation is better for this episode of Faith Positive Radio. And I just pray God's blessings on you, your amazing wife, and that little boy. How old is he?
He's 7.5. His name's Valiant.
Oh, wow. What a cool name, Valiant. I love it. I love it. All right, man. God bless you, Valiant, and your wife.
Thank you, Dr. Joey. God bless you.
Thanks for listening to Faith Positive Radio, the Christian business coaching conversation that increases your faith with greater joy at work so you love God and others more. Suggest guests and ask questions when you email Dr. Joey at info@getpositive.today. And be sure to get your free gift of the 5 positive business conversations to have today coaching program at getpositive.today. Until next time, may God bless you with everything your heart can hope for and more than your mind can imagine.